So, Gary, was willst du haben?
I'm not sure. I feel an energy across here that's almost like fear or apprehension. And I know I wanted to work and I had no thoughts when I was sitting over there. The only thought that's come up is last night I ate a pizza with Italian sausage and cheese, and had a dessert pizza there. And
I had a what?
It was dessert pizza. I went along with it. It's got a lot of butter.
Dessert pizza?
Yeah,
dessert.
Butter and cinnamon.
They call that a dessert pizza? Is there such a thing? Dessert pizza? Are you kidding me? Really?
I've never heard of it.
Do they call it that or do you call it that?
No, they call it that. And,
Where is this place?
Well, this is Godfather's.
Oh.
So this is cinnamon and sugar and butter.
Oh, yuck.
Well,
I want to barf.
Well, that's kind of what I've been feeling ever since.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's such a big thing, but it's familiar to me though. It's old familiar. In two ways, I think it is. One was I'm going away for a day or two, so I get to do what I want. Since Christmas, I've been really good with this diet most of the time, but I've been letting down a little bit when I go away. And I think it's okay. I don't know. But yesterday, so about dinner time, I had a friend working on my house, and he was saying, "Well, what are you doing for dinner?" And I was saying, "Well, gee, maybe we'll go out." And I started thinking about pizza, and called my daughter and my granddaughter and said, "Would you want to eat pizza with us?" And they did, but then they couldn't do it. And I'm thinking, hell, I got all kinds of stuff right here. Within 15 minutes, I can eat stuff I like and the way I want to. And then I decided to go for a pizza, and I gave myself permission to do it. But I didn't like it, and I stuffed myself. And I slept very uncomfortably last night. So you may read it detail. I mean, I'm gonna not, well, no, there I said it again. I think, I'm not sure. I don't like it.
You don't like what?
That I ate that way, and not that I didn't, not that I ate that way, but that I got to a point where I wasn't going to do it, and then I did it. And
So just say this sentence as you go into trance. I don't know what I want, and let yourself feel all that confusion.
I don't know what I want.
Say, Mama, I don't know what I want. surprising, isn't it? When you tried to put your arm down it, your arm wouldn't go down. That would be really surprising. Try to put it down. No, it won't go down, it goes up. How did you look at it? You see, it still wants to go up. Yeah. So when I count from 1 to 3, your arm will go down. 1, 2, it's not going down. 3, and so it does go down. Now, the confusion that you experience is just part of the trance state that you are in. And confusion can be perceived in various ways. One of the most notable things about it is that you can't perceive the direction in which you should or even in which you want to move. And should and want are not all that different, since we're told all the time that a person should do what he wants to do, and that a really good person wants to do what he should do. So should and want are not that different. But not having a direction is not knowing what one wants, what one should have or should do, or what one wants to have or do. That's confusion. That's one aspect of confusion. Not knowing is another aspect of confusion. And some people get confused every time they realize they don't know something. And they equate not knowing with being confused. Well, it's possible to not know something and yet to know what direction you want to move in. On the other hand, if you don't know what direction you should move in, you may feel confused. Not knowing, confusion is not knowing. Not knowing what the bases are, not knowing what the landmarks are, not knowing the directions, this is north, this is east, south, and west. That's being confused, not having a sense of direction. Maybe that's one of the oldest and best ways of adding to confusion, because we experience ourselves as constantly in motion, and if we don't have a sense of direction, we could say that we are confused. And the confusion is part of your trance. So I want you to allow yourself to feel your confusion. As deeply as you are ready to feel it at this point. You may not be ready to feel it all the way down to the very bottom. And that's all right. Instruction is just to feel it as completely as you are ready to feel it at this time. There's some other ways of looking at confusion. on the one hand, we can say confusion is not having a sense of direction, not knowing which way to go, where to head. But we can also be confused in that we may not know what's right and wrong, what's wrong. What's right, what's wrong in many different senses. We might not know what's healthy or unhealthy. We might not know what's good and what's bad. We might not know what's correct and what's incorrect. Confusion can mean mixing up our standards or our values so we don't know which is which. So many ways of looking at confusion. So let yourself feel this whole lifetime of confusion that you have experienced it. And you can do that in different ways. One way that many people will do is to allow images to come up, past-oriented images, which they would call memories, so that memories come up in which they begin to see how they first became confused, whether it was a confusion of direction or the confusion of value, or the confusion of how things work and how they function. And the whole thing about confusion is that there's nothing inherently bad or wrong about confusion. If you're just out to take a walk and you walk around and then coming back, you have a choice of going to the left or to the right, and you don't know which way you came, you're confused. It really doesn't matter as long as you're heading in the right direction, even though you're confused about the exact route, because you'll get back to where you started from. Maybe you'll be surprised, but you will. And you will have had your walk. If, on the other hand, if taking the wrong turn leads you into a dangerous bog where you get sucked down in the bog and disappear and are gone forever, then the confusion would have been very important. So confusion is only important or unimportant depending upon the outcome and what's at stake. But if you feel threatened by just confusion per se, then you might feel threatened most of the time if you are in a trance in which confusion is a foremost and uppermost characteristic. And you can begin to see that images can come. You can start to recall, reconstruct images of those events that first caused you to see yourself as a confused person. Because there is no such thing as a confused person. A confused person doesn't exist. There are only people who have self-images of confusion. And those people compound those self-images by judging themselves, by saying, it's wrong to be confused, therefore I'm not a good person, I'm a confused person. But see if you can let go of those judgments for a while, and just as an experiment, allow yourself to feel confused without judging it in any way. So tell me, Gary, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Tell me, can you feel your confusion now?
Yeah.
What is it like? I'm not asking you what you are confused about. I'm asking you, what is the confusion like? What is that like to be confused?
It's like like the plates of the earth kind of going like this.
Like the plates of the earth going together, that we know that the continental plates are moving. All right, just see that happening. Now, I don't imagine that the earth makes a sour face and says, oh God, this is awful. I think it's just a happening. So instead of getting into the semantic reality that this is some kind of great big deal, just begin to see what it really feels like. Replace your apprehension and your self-condemnation with an attitude of curiosity. Just good old curiosity. And what is that like? The confusion, when you look at it with curiosity rather than with apprehension or with condemnation or with any kind of judgment or any kind of opinion as to its value, when you just see it as something, and we call it confusion, what's it like?
You can feel this is where the plates are rubbing, and that's where I was, and now I can see the earth further out. It's bigger. The earth is a pretty big place. Something I can see for a few hundred miles inside.
When you're seeing the earth from a distance?
Yeah,
Is
I'm
it
feeling it. I'm feeling it. Like if here's where it's together, and in this part of me, it's this. I can now take you out to here, and I also have an image of the total, the land going back 100 miles or so from the place where the two plates are running.
Okay, just experience all of that. Do you find that pleasurable or unpleasurable? It might be only plus or minus 1 or 1/2, but it's plus for you.
Plus.
Plus about how much on a scale of 1 to 10? Or 0 to 10?
2.
It's pleasurable about 2. So it's more than just a little pleasurable. It's a little more pleasurable than that, but it's still not exciting. Okay. So feel that pleasure. Remember what you're experiencing now. You're experiencing your confusion. Can you allow yourself, can you give yourself permission to feel the pleasure of being confused? Isn't that strange? You have thought all of your life somehow that confusion must always be avoided, right? Yeah, I'll bet most of the people in this room have always thought that. Isn't it really weird that when you just begin to experience a confusion, it's actually pleasurable? Plus 2 on a scale of 0 to 10. Mildly pleasurable. So feel the pleasure of your confusion. Wow.
4.
Building, it's 3 or 4. When you allow yourself, you find that it's even more. Isn't that interesting? Now, all these years you've been denying yourself this sense of pleasure because you had an idea in your head. You had been hypnotized as you were growing up and given the suggestion that confusion was something terrible that must always be avoided. Because if you didn't always avoid it, you would meet your doom. Something terrible would happen. But it's not that way at all, is it? In terms of what you're experiencing. You feel your confusion?
Yeah.
Do you know which way you're supposed to go now?
No, not quite. I'm going this way, but it's pretty much holding it down. But yeah, yeah, I mean, it was like the same things happening inside my head. I've been pulling most of it.
Yeah, it's so hard for you to say, I don't know, and be content with that, right? Now, confusion's first cousin is a young lady named Ambiguity. That's your first name. Ambiguity is your last name. Ambiguity. And you know what ambiguity is, don't you? Ambiguity means that a thing can mean two different or more than two things. And you don't know what it means. And that's one of the reasons why cousin confusion comes around all the time. Because ambiguity is always there. What are you experiencing?
You know, I had a struggle going out here, you know, and as I think of ambiguity, another one started in here, but it's kind of like they're continuous. I mean, and it's another plate, you know. It's,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Right. But I'll tell you something about ambiguity. She's the cousin of confusion. But she's got a brother, a twin brother. His name is Paradox. Yeah. And the twin brother of ambiguity is Paradox, which means that there are two things that appear to be true and they contradict each other. That's a paradox. Remember in Gilbert and Sullivan, he said, a paradox, a most ingenious paradox, a paradox, a most ingenious paradox, paradox. So, sometimes it looks as if confusion has been called in by paradox, and sometimes it looks as if confusion has been called in by ambiguity. And then there are some more remote relatives, but they all belong to the same basic family. Like there's relativity, which means that something is true sometimes and not true other times. That usually calls in confusion too. And probably the only way a person gets to be really comfortable with confusion is to stop judging it as being something bad and begins to see that it is something that is simply called in almost automatically whenever any of the twins are around, ambiguity, where things can mean two different things at the same time, or paradox, where two different things are true, totally different opposite things are true at the same time. And then, there are those other smaller cousins around, like relativity, which means that things are true in one context but not true in the other. Mary, what are you experiencing right now?
I just kind of broke through into,
What?
I just broke through into space. The plates that were there.
Yeah.
Let me see. 1 second. Going through.
All right. So you're expanding your awareness. Let your experience, your awareness, your energy field expand into infinity. As I count from 1 to 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is what Robert Monroe calls Focus 12 that you are in now. It is beyond Focus 10, in which your body is asleep and your mind is very, very clear. Your body is still asleep, your mind is very clear, but now your awareness expands into infinity. It stretches out in every direction, right, left, front, back, up and down, infinite. Just feel that. Feel this incredible vastness. And you are at the center of it because since your awareness is expanded to include it, that means that you include all infinity. All of infinity is inside of you. Everything. And of course, infinity contains everything that exists and has ever existed or will ever exist. It's all you. And you're in a position now where you can send out a question and receive back a sign. So say, give me a sign. Say that.
Give me a sign.
Give me an insight.
Give me an insight.
Give me a lead.
Give me a lead.
How can I win through my confusion?
How can I win through my confusion?
And send that question out into the infinity and open your heart with gratitude. And take whatever comes back, whether it be image or sensation or thought or feeling or memory or image, take it back, receive it with gratitude. focus one, which is ordinary, wide awake, being in touch with the here and now. 12. 11. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1.
I'm here, but I'm slightly askew.
Is that confusing to you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you get an answer to your question? You want to share it? You don't have to.
There aren't many words.
Or any words.
This, it was opening up, allowing the universe in, and then the universe was coming in, and was a part of me. And I snapped, and I was, and I'm not holding it in here, but I was into the mechanical part of this, and so I was there letting go, and it just started coming in and out. So it just, it just became, it can come there, and it'll continue.
All right. Okay, well, I feel finished for now, too. Thank you. Do you want sharing?
Yes.
Okay, so sharing.
Oh, Gary, I'll share. I really appreciated your work because I think of some clients that could be real beneficial. But on a personal level, number one, it was real fun to watch you go from judging that state to just experiencing it, especially when you went, well, 3 or 4, you know. But then I really just appreciated when it started expanding as you felt it more. But then I really appreciated the opportunity, and there's been something that's been real confusing, either or for me all day, and so I went into trance with you there and just asked, how did you phrase that, Dick? When you said you are now at the edge of the universe, and it was how you phrased, you could put the question out to the
How
universe.
can I win through my confusion?
Was that it?
Well, I said now you have expanded your awareness
Right.
to infinitely,
Right, that part I
to the
understood,
entire
but
universe, and therefore the entire universe is inside of you.
no, that was not what I'm referring to. It
And
was-
you are now able to send a question out into that infinite space
Yeah, well,
and wait for the answer to come back.
okay, well, ultimately, anyway, that's what I did, and it was very beneficial. What a relief to just give it over. So I really appreciated that on all kinds of levels. Thank you.
I also did a lot of work with you, and I'm familiar with confusion, how stuck I can get with it. Just enjoy the energy, the other side of that.
It's nice to. It was real free. That's helpful for me too.
It was for me too. great at just experiencing that confusion and being. I think I even thoughts.
You're not real sure, but you're a little confused about it, right?
May I confirm?
Oh, no, don't take him out of his confusion, he's enjoying it.
There's a variety of sounds in here, so.
Kind of had the same experience. I was at one point you were in confusion. The next thing I remember is kind of sitting up and you were in the movement part where you talked about Robert Monroe and focus, I guess was the word you used. And then you were just it was so like, oh, this is kind of wonderful. I'm taking this in, and it's felt the expression on your face was so. There was depth of feeling to it. It was really touching in many ways. So I appreciated that. What you did. But there was a spot in the middle there. I think I was asleep all the time. Or someplace, I'm not sure where. Talking about ducks, parrot ducks.
I really enjoyed, getting in the confusion to just the acceptance place of the reality of it. The tectonic plates, sort of nice. It really flashed me that image of the trees, there's one tree superior to the other. Just that sort of nature, that natural thing. This is like it is what it is, and that's where it's at. That's what's happening. There's no judgment to be made about it. It just is what it is. And that was real nice for me to let go. I don't think I got it quite as positive a state, but I really felt like it really went into the positive. And for me, it just felt no judgment. That's what it is. Maybe therefore it's okay. It was such a trip back into. I went back and saw my parents. Not words for it, but that two different messages came in. Like, God, that was sort of plate stuff. And you go back there, and then they have that, that looking at the confusion through my history, and then what you were talking about, just it's no big deal.
How do you see where it would be easy to get hung up in his? So he goes back and he sees his parents getting mixed messages. Now we could take the next 5 weeks, 3 times a week, working on it, on the confused messages from his parents. This is the first time it's mentioned. It's not the experiences that you had that are the problem. They have nothing to do with it. Problem is totally the self-image that comes out of those experiences. You are not your past experience, but you can identify with the self-image that comes out of it, and that's very different from going back and analyzing the hell out of the past experience. Now, the key here was to find out how he was relating to me.
How he's relating to you.
To me. That's where you start always. Fritz said, don't trust your client. He comes to you and says, make me feel good, but don't disturb my neurosis. Which means he comes to you and starts relating to you, and he wants you to accept him on those terms. Now, what are the terms that he was relating to me on? He was coming to me in a state of confusion, expecting me to somehow lead him out of the confusion. And the more I would try to lead him out, the more confused he would become. This would go on, and then I would say, all right, your hour's up, I'll see you next Thursday Next Thursday, I take, oh, let's see, where were we? We were confused, that's where we'd start. So instead of relating to him in that way, I frustrated him. I didn't try to lead him out of the confusion at all, which he wanted me to do. And you know, he's not sitting there a mean kind of a bastard, you know, trying to get me to do that. He's but that's what the whole thing is situationally. He's confused and he wants me to lead him out of the confusion. I can't do it. And if I fall for that, then I've been sucked in and nothing will happen. So instead of trying to lead him out of the confusion, I lead him into the confusion.
Ambiguity.
What?
Ambiguity, paradox, relativity.
Yeah,
It's,
I thought that was brilliant.
There was.
that was fun.
Brilliant.